Greetings, fellow detectives. Wizard Kitten here, bringing you a new Nancy Drew analysis video. Today's video is brought to you by the patrons over at Mystique Manor and by all the official Fellow Detective channel members. If you too would like to support the channel and gain access to exclusive features, check out patreon.com/wizardkitten to become a patron, or click join next to the subscribe button to become an official fellow detective. While researching and writing my most recent Nancy Drew analysis video on Unconventional Culprits, linked in the upper corner, I started to notice an interesting pattern of characters in the Nancy Drew series who could have been considered culprits, but essentially got away with their crimes. Though their malicious motives were used to spread around suspicion and another character ultimately took the blame as the final culprit, these characters piqued my interest because they did something illegal. They could have been chosen as the culprit, but the game indicates that they were either clever enough or lucky enough to end the game without any major consequences. I should mention too that in the comments on my Unconventional Culprits video, fellow detective Julie brought up this idea for a video mentioning culprits who commit separate crimes but are not the main culprit. Thank you, Julie. You read my mind. So today, let's dig into these interesting characters, those who committed an illegal act but essentially got away with it. To narrow down this list, I am only including characters who could be charged with an actual crime. This means characters that did something unethical but not necessarily illegal would not be included. For example, Charlena Purcell in Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon plagiarized Laurie Gerard's work, which is unethical but not a crime because Laurie's work was not copyrighted. Similarly, I am not including characters who faced some sort of consequence for their actions, even if the consequences were not legal, because that means they didn't fully get away with their crime. For example, Simone Mueller in the final scene more or less gets canceled in Hollywood as an agent and producer after her unethical and arguably illegal publicity stunts. In today's video, I will be discussing the following games in chronological order. Even though I am not directly discussing the game Culprits, the information included in today's video could potentially spoil a game by giving you hints about who is or is not a culprit. You have been warned. First up, Henrik Vander Hune in Secret of the Scarlet Hand. By the end of the game, we learn that Henrik is in fact responsible for the theft of the Pakal carving. He broke the case in the museum, removed the Pakal carving, and hid it in a different location in the museum. Whether this is considered legitimate theft, given that the carving never left the building, is up for debate. But regardless, Henrik destroyed the museum case and put a lot of people through an awful lot of stress, including Joanna Riggs, who he almost inadvertently got fired. Furthermore, Nancy uncovers while snooping that Henrik has, at least in the past, had dealings with the antiquities black market. It's unclear whether he profited from his involvement or if he was involved purely to try and recover antiquities, so maybe illegal, maybe not. However, Henrik Vander Hune is given a complete pass by the end of the game because his intentions were all good. He stole the Pakal carving to protect it, he helped Nancy recover it, he suffered by getting shoved off the pyramid and getting amnesia, and he helped recite a poem at the end of the game declaring Nancy a hero. All of this combined seems to suggest that everyone forgives Henrik for his misdeeds, so he faces no consequences. What a lucky guy, except for the severe concussion. Next up, Richard Topam from Secret of the Old Clock, the person on this list who I think is least deserving of getting off scot-free. Even though Topam doesn't end up as the final official culprit of this game, we have fairly definitive proof by the end that he forged Josiah Crowley's will and signature to take over the entirety of his estate. Nancy finds the real will by the end of the game, and Topam still manages to deny wrongdoing even though the real will is completely different from the forged one. Perhaps the citizens of Titusville were fine with the consequence of him just not inheriting the estate, but Topam also insists he'll be contesting the real will, meaning he still thinks he has a leg to stand on. Personally, I think Topam should absolutely be charged for his crimes, but for now, he seems to have gotten away. Next up, Tino Balduchi in Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon. During the train ride out to Copper Gorge, Tino Balduchi throws the emergency brake and tries to frame John Gray for the crime, insisting that he found one of John's thermometers right near the scene of the crime. I checked, and as a police officer, it is very much illegal for Balduchi to plant evidence and try to implicate someone. Normally, this wouldn't have been a crime in the first place, but Balduchi has the power to actually leverage charges. Nancy catches him in the act, though, and lets him off, for some reason. Personally, I don't think he deserves forgiveness in this instance, and Nancy should have at the very least reported this incident to his supervisor, but I guess since he's not technically on the clock, it wouldn't count. I don't know. Regardless, Tino's a jerk, and he didn't face any consequences for this terrible move. Next up, Malachi Craven in The Creature of Kapu Cave. This game opens with a flashback scene of Quigley Kim's camp in the jungle being destroyed, seemingly by some sort of monster. Eventually, we discover that Craven was the one who destroyed the camp in a fit of rage. Quigley could 100% press charges for destruction of property, but she apparently doesn't. It seems like Quigley herself was up to something shady, so maybe she just didn't want to get involved and potentially have her wrongdoings come out in the open. So I guess Malachi Craven and his anger issues got lucky this time. Next up, we have a twofer, Guadalupe Koo Lou and Lou Tbet in White Wolf of Icicle Creek. Similar to Malachi Craven in Creature of Kapu Cave, Guadalupe Koo Lou could absolutely be charged for destruction of property. She went to town on the ice fishing shack and even vandalized Ollie's firearm, which is incredibly reckless and dangerous. Ollie threatens to persecute Guadalupe, but it seems like she makes a clean getaway. She absconds from the lodge, and we never hear of her getting charged with anything afterwards. Similarly, Lou Tbet could absolutely be charged for attempted theft. He stole one of the dinosaur bones from the lobby of Icicle Creek Lodge and had a notebook which seemed to detail his intention to steal others. Many of the fossils he has in his room are from sites outside of the lodge, but not all of them. If Chantal saw fit, she could charge Lou, but instead he pulls a Guadalupe, returns the Rex bone to Nancy, and vanishes, never to be seen again. Apparently, running away from your crimes is an effective strategy in the Nancy Drew universe. Next up, Dwayne Powers, formerly Johnny Roll, in Ransom of the Seven Ships. By the end of the game, we have discovered that Dwayne Powers was undercover and kidnapped Bess to convince Nancy to find El Toro's lost treasure. The end sequence sees Dwayne dropping Nancy into a concealed hole in the ground where he has also trapped Bess. He runs off to his boat with the map to Cibola, convinced that Bess and Nancy will be unable to escape. They do manage to get out, but not before Dwayne has absconded with the treasure. However, when the authorities find his boat, he is nowhere to be found, a concerning development when you're in the middle of the ocean. The game provides two theories. Either Dwayne managed to get away somehow with the treasure, or he fell overboard and drowned. If he drowned, then Dwayne definitely did not get away with this crime. But if he managed to get away, which honestly is probably more likely, then he isn't facing any consequences for kidnapping, theft, and attempted murder. This one is interesting because we aren't actually certain that he got away, but if he did, then this is the most successful Nancy Drew escape on this list. Next up, Rachel and Kim Hubbard from Warnings at Waverly Academy. This is an interesting case because while Rachel and Kim were delivering notes for the Black Cat, they were doing so under duress. The Black Cat blackmailed Rachel and Kim after discovering that they were secret twins, pretending to be one person and sharing tuition and a student workload. Delivering notes for the Black Cat is one thing, and honestly not even the crime here. There are several other crimes that they could be charged with, including fraud, trespassing, and theft. There's also the significant problem that attending school is compulsory unless your parents decide to homeschool you, which means that Kim Hubbard has technically been truant for years. This isn't necessarily a crime either, but Rachel and Kim's father could get in serious trouble for this. Apparently, though, Waverly Academy decides to sweep all of this under the rug. Rachel and Kim face no consequences and instead are both allowed to graduate from Waverly Academy with no black marks on their records. This is even though neither of them actually completed all of the requirements for graduation, since they each only did half of the work. Honestly, this is a little wild for me, but I guess the developers wanted to send the message that pursuing education, no matter how deceitful, is a good thing? I don't know. Regardless, Rachel and Kim completely got away with it. The lucky ducks. Next up, Dylan Carter in Tomb of the Lost Queen. As far as I've been able to figure, there isn't really any concrete evidence in the game that proves, for sure, that Dylan was at the dig site because he was involved in the black market. However, there is an awful lot of circumstantial evidence. Dylan is very interested in getting close to Abdullah, who we do know is involved in the black market. Dylan has several fake IDs, he knew about the dig site before any average citizen should, and he managed to get dropped off at the dig site again before any average citizen should. Jamila is suspicious of Dylan and he gets a bunch of boulders dropped on him, which could have been a legitimate accident but also could have been set up to get rid of him. Then when we speak with him on the phone in the hospital, Dylan alludes multiple times to the dangers of being at the site and talks about the black market. But despite all this, as far as we know, Dylan doesn't get charged with anything or even pursued as having done something illegal. I guess he doesn't get off completely free because he is in terrible physical shape after all the big giant rocks crush him, but again, this could have been a coincidence. All in all, after he's recovered, Dylan probably just continued on his merry way. And last, but certainly not least, we have Clara Thorton in Ghost of Thornton Hall. By the end of the game, we have discovered that Jessalyn Thornton is perfectly okay and was not kidnapped. We learn instead that she disappeared because she needed some time to process some new information that she learned from Harper Thornton. That information was that Clara Thornton was responsible for Charlotte Thornton's death by starting the fire that ultimately killed her during her birthday party. During the end letter, we learn that Clara talks things through with Jessalyn, explaining that she was scared and angry when she set the fire, but didn't intend to kill Charlotte. She describes it as a terrible accident, and apparently the Thornton clan accepts this answer and decides to handle the affair by themselves without involving authorities. We don't hear anything about Clara getting charged with murder, and apparently their lives simply go on. This is a pretty substantial crime to get away with, and though Clara certainly seems to have suffered since then, she still managed to avoid any legal consequences for her actions. And there you have it, fellow detectives. So ends my list of all the culprits that got away with it in the Nancy Drew series. This was one of my more exploratory videos, not really comparing which ones were worst or best, but rather simply diving into the mystery character trope of culprit but not a culprit. Of these culprits, only 2 are actually considered the final culprit of the game: Clara Thornton in Ghost of Thornton Hall and Dwayne Powers in Ransom of the Seven Ships. This means that Nancy successfully captures all but 2 of the final culprits, which is a pretty good ratio overall. The other suspects on this list easily could have been the final culprits given their suspicious motives, but managed to evade prosecution and instead serve simply as red herrings. I enjoy the presence of these types of characters in mystery stories. Creating a compelling whodunit by the end does often necessitate that some of the characters be guilty of something, even if it isn't the final crime. This diverts suspicion and keeps us on our toes, which ultimately makes it all the more satisfying when we uncover the true culprit. I also like that there are a couple official culprits who escaped, for lack of a better word. This feels realistic and adds to the lore of Nancy's mystery-solving repertoire. But what do you think, fellow detectives? What do you think of these culprits who got away with it? Can you think of any other culprits who got away with it that I didn't mention on this list? Let a wizard kitten know in the comment section down below. If you really enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that like button or tipping me for the video with a super thanks next to the download button right beneath the video. If you would like to come join a fantastic group of fellow detectives at Mystique Manor as a patron for the channel, gain access to exclusive content, and support the making of more content like this, please check out patreon.com/wizardkitten. I also have channel memberships with exclusive badges and emojis to use during streams and in the comment section. If you'd like to support the channel by becoming an official fellow detective, click join next to the subscribe button. Please feel free to follow the channel on Instagram or Discord, linked in the description box down below. And as always, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more Nancy Drew and Cozy Game content. Thank you so much for watching, fellow detectives. I will see you soon.